such a hot afternoon, and I'm getting so tired of sitting here on the bank of the pool and having nothing to do. Aren't you tired?
No, I've got a book to read.
I don't think I'd like that book.
Why not?
Well, it hasn't any pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book without pictures or conversations? Oh, dear.
The hot afternoon was stupid, and she was wondering whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies, when suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her.
Oh, dear. Oh, my fur and whiskers, I shall be too late. Let me look at my watch. Oh, my fur and whiskers. Oh.
I've never seen a rabbit with a waistcoat pocket before. Or with a... I must see where it goes.
So Alice jumped to her feet and ran across the field after it, and she was just in time to see it pop down a large rabbit hole under the hedge. In another moment, down went Alice after it, never once considering how in the world she was to get out again. The rabbit hole went straight on like a tunnel for some way, and then dipped suddenly down. So suddenly that Alice hadn't time to stop.
Oh, I'm falling.
And she found herself falling down what seemed to be...
Oh, I'm still falling. Well, either the well is very deep, or I'm falling very slowly. Yes, it's more like floating down, Red. It's too dark to see the bottom. There are cupboards and shelves on the sides of the well, and the shelves have got jars and bottles and all kinds of things on them. I wonder whether I could take down a jar from one of the shelves. I'm falling so slowly, I think I could. There, I've got one. It's labelled orange marmalade. But oh dear, it's empty. How disappointing. Now what shall I do with the jar? I'd better not drop it from the well and kill him. I know. I'll try and put it in one of the cupboards at the side. Still haven't reached the bottom. I wonder how many miles I've fallen by this time. I must be getting somewhere near the centre of the earth. I'm still falling. Down, down, down. I'm afraid Dinah the cat will miss me very much tonight. I hope they'll remember her saucer of milk at tea time. Oh, Dinah, my dear, I wish you were down here with me. There are no mice in the air, I'm afraid, but you might catch a bat, and that's very like a mouse, you know. But do cats eat bats, I wonder? Do cats eat bats? Do bats eat cats? Do cats eat
And here
bats?
Alice began to get rather
bats
sleepy,
eat cats?
and went on saying to herself
Do
in a
cats
dreamy
eat
sort of way.
bats? Do bats eat cats?
You see, as she couldn't answer either question, it didn't much matter which way she put it. She felt that she was dozing off, when suddenly,
Oh!
down she came upon a heap of sticks and dry leaves. Alice was not a bit hurt, and she jumped up onto her feet in a moment. Before her was another long passage, and the white rabbit was still in sight, hurrying down it. There was not a moment to be lost. Away went Alice like the wind after it.
Oh, my ears and whiskers, how late it's getting. Oh, dear.
And suddenly the rabbit disappeared round a corner. But when Alice turned the corner after it, the rabbit was nowhere to be seen. Alice found herself in a long, low hall with doors all round it.
I wonder where they all lead to.
She went all the way down one side of the hall and up the other side, trying every door.
Oh dear, they're all locked. How am I ever to get out again? Oh, what a funny little table. It's made of solid glass. And there's a tiny golden key lying on it. But the key's much too small to unlock any of the doors. Unless, perhaps, behind this little curtain... Oh, yes! There's a tiny little door about 15 inches high. Yes, it fits. Oh, there's the loveliest garden I ever saw, with flowers and fountains and everything. I wish I could go and play in it, but I can't even get my head through the doorway. And even if my head would go through, it would be of very little use without my shoulders. I wish I could shut up like a telescope. I think I could, if I only knew how to begin.
For you see, so many out-of-the-way things had happened lately that Alice had begun to think that very few things indeed were really impossible.
Well, it's no use waiting here. I wonder whether there's anything else on that glass table. There's a little bottle. That certainly was not here before. and there's a label on the neck of the bottle. It says, "Drink me." Well, it's all very well to say drink me, but I'm not going to do that in a hurry. No, I'll look first and see whether it's marked poison or not, because if you drink much from a bottle marked poison, it's almost certain to disagree with you sooner or later. No, it's not marked poison, so I'll taste it. Very nice. A sort of mixed flavour of cherry tart and custard and pineapple and roast turkey and toffee and hot buttered toast. Yes, I'll drink it. Oh, what a curious feeling. I must be shutting up like a telescope.
And so she was. She was now only 10 inches high, just the right size for going through the little door into that lovely garden. But when she got to the door...
Oh, bother! I've forgotten to bring the little golden key to open it.
Then, when she went back to the glass table for the key, she found she was now much too small to reach it.
Oh, bother!
But soon her eye fell on a little glass box that was lying under the table. She opened it and found in it a very small cake on which the words "Eat me" were beautifully marked in currants.
Well, I'll eat it. And if it makes me grow larger, I can reach the key. And if it makes me grow smaller, I can creep under the door. So either way, I'll get into the garden. And I don't care which happens.
She ate a little bit, holding her hand on the top of her head to feel which way it was growing. And she was quite surprised to find that she remained the same size. So she set to work and very soon finished off the cake.
Curiouser and curiouser.
She was so much surprised that for the moment she quite forgot how to speak good English.
Now I'm opening out like the largest telescope that ever was. Goodbye, feet. Oh, my poor little feet. I wonder who will put on your shoes and stockings for you now, dears. I'm sure I shan't be able. I shall be a great deal too far off to trouble myself about you. You must manage the best way you can. But I must be kind to them, or perhaps they won't walk the way I want to go. Let me see. I'll give them a new pair of boots every Christmas. How funny it'll seem, sending presents to one's own feet. And how odd the address will look. To Alice's right foot, hearthrug, near the fireplace, with Alice's love. Oh dear, what nonsense I'm talking.
Just at this moment, her head struck against the roof of the hall.
Oh!
In fact, she was now rather more than 9 feet high. And she at once took up the little golden key and hurried off to the garden door. Poor Alice. It was as much as she could do, lying down on one side to look through into the garden with one eye. But to get through was more hopeless than ever. She sat down and began to cry, shedding gallons of tears until there was a large pool around her, about 4 inches deep and reaching halfway down the hall. After a time, she heard a little pattering of feet in the distance, and she hastily dried her eyes to see what was coming. It was the White Rabbit, returning splendidly dressed, with a pair of white kid gloves in one hand and a large fan in the other.
Oh, my ears and whiskers. Oh, the Duchess. Oh, won't she be savage if I've kept her waiting? Oh, dear.
If you please, sir.
Oh, whiskers.
The White Rabbit was so startled that he dropped his white kid gloves and the fan and scurried away into the darkness as hard as he could go. Alice took up the fan and gloves, and as the hall was very hot, she kept fanning herself all the time she went on talking to herself.
Dear, dear, how queer everything is today. I wonder if I've changed in the night. Let me think. Was I the same when I got up this morning? But if I'm not the same, who in the world am I? I'm sure I hadn't changed to Ada, for her hair goes in such long ringlets, and mine doesn't go in ringlets at all. And I'm sure I can't be Mabel, for I know all sorts of things, and she knows such a very little. Besides, she's she, and I'm I, and oh dear, how puzzling it all is. I'll try if I know all the things I used to know. Let me see. 4 times 5 is 12, and 4 times 6 is 13, and 4 times 7 is... No, that's all wrong, I'm certain. I must have changed for Mabel. I'll try and recite, How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail, and pour the waters of the Nile on every shining scale? How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly spreads his claws, and welcomes little fishes in with gently smiling jaws. Oh, I'm sure those are not the right words. I must be Mabel after all. And I shall have to go and live in that poky little house, and have next to no toys to play with, and oh, ever so many lessons to learn. No, if I'm able, I'll stay down here. But oh dear, I'm so very tired of being all alone here.
As she said this, she looked down at her hands and was surprised to see that while she was talking, she'd put on one of the rabbit's little white kid gloves.
How can I have done that? I must be growing small again.
She got up and went to the table to measure herself by it, and found that she was now about 2 feet high, and was going on shrinking rapidly. She soon found out that this was because of the fan she was holding, and she dropped it hastily, just in time to save herself from shrinking away altogether.
That was a narrow escape.
As she said these words, her foot slipped, and in another moment, she was up to her chin in salt water. Her first idea was that she had somehow fallen into the sea, but she soon made out that she was in the pool of tears, which she had wept when she was 9 feet high. So she swam around, trying to find a way out.
I wish I hadn't cried so much. I shall be punished for it now, I suppose, by being drowned in my own tears. That will be a queer thing, to be sure. What's that splashing about over there? It sounds like a walrus. Or could it be a hippopotamus? I'll swim over and see. Good gracious! It's a mouse. It's the same size as me. Of course. I'd quite forgotten. I'm the size of a mouse myself now. It must have slipped and fallen into the pool of tears, just as I did. I wonder if it'd be any use speaking to it. Oh, mouse, do you know the way out of this pool? I'm very tired of swimming about here, oh, mouse. Well, it winked at me then, but it didn't say anything. Perhaps it doesn't understand English. I dare say it's a French mouse. I'll try it with a sentence from my French lesson book. Où est ma chatte? Oh, I beg your pardon. I quite forgot you didn't like cats.
Not like cats? Would you like cats if you were me?
Well, perhaps not. Don't be angry about it. And yet I wish I could show you our cat Dinah. She's such a dear, quiet thing. And she sits purring so nicely by the fire, licking her paws and washing her face. And she's so good at catching mice. Oh, I beg your pardon. We won't talk about cats anymore if you'd rather not.
We indeed. As if I should wish to mention such a subject. My family have always hated cats. Nasty, low, vulgar things. I don't wish to hear the name again.
Oh, I won't mention it. Are you fond of dogs?
Dogs now. Whatever next, indeed.
Oh dear, I'm afraid I've offended it again. Mouse dear, do come back, and we won't talk about cats anymore, or dogs either if you don't like them. Please, Mouse dear.
No, very well. Let's get to the shore. And then I'll tell you my history, and you'll understand why it is I hate cats and dogs.
I can see the shore over there, so you follow me, Mouse.
By now, the pool was getting quite crowded with birds and animals that had fallen into it. There was a duck and a dodo, a lory and an eaglet, and several other curious creatures. Alice led the way, and the whole party swam to the shore. They were indeed a queer-looking party that assembled on the bank. Birds with draggled feathers, the animals with their fur clinging close to them, and all dripping wet, cross and uncomfortable. The first question, of course, was how to get dry again. They had a consultation about this. And after a few minutes, it seemed quite natural to Alice to find herself talking familiarly with them, as if she'd known them all her life. Indeed, she had quite a long argument with the lory.
Nonsense, you're quite wrong.
Why am I wrong?
Because I said so.
But why should I be wrong just because you say so?
I'm older than you and I must know better.
I don't believe you are older than me.
Yes, I am.
Well, how old are you?
Shan't tell.
Quiet, everybody. The mouse is going to speak.
Yes, thank you, Dodo. Now sit down, all of you, and listen to me. I'll soon make you dry enough. Are you all ready? This is the driest thing I know. Silence all round, if you please. William the Conqueror, whose cause was favoured by the Pope, was soon submitted to by the English. Edwin and Morcar, the Earls of Mercia and Northumbria.
That doesn't seem to dry me at all.
In that case, the best thing to get us dry would be a caucus race.
What is a caucus race, Dodo?
Why, the best way to explain a caucus race is to do it. Now, I'll mark out the course in a sort of a circle like this.
That's not a circle.
The exact shape doesn't matter. Now the duck can stand here.
Why?
And the mouse here.
Oh, very well.
And the lorry here. And the magpie and the 2 guinea pigs over there. And some of you over there. And you here, my dear.
All right. But the duck has started running already.
Why not?
And the lorry.
Well, naturally, in a caucus race, you begin running when you like and you leave off when you like.
But how do we know when the race is over?
I'll tell you.
So, when Alice and some of the animals had been running for half an hour or so and were quite dry again, the dodo suddenly called out,
The race is over.
Who's won? Who's won?
This requires a great deal of thought. Everybody has won. And all must have prizes.
But who's to give the prizes?
Yes,
who?
Why, she, of course.
Who, me? But
Prizes.
Alice had a box of sugar plums in her pocket, so she handed them round as prizes. There was exactly one apiece all round.
But she must have a prize herself, you know.
Of course. What else have you got in your pocket?
only a thimble.
Hand it over here. Thank you. We beg your humble acceptance of this elegant thimble.
Alice thought the whole thing very absurd, but they all looked so grave that she did not dare to laugh. And as she couldn't think of anything to say, she simply bowed and took the thimble, looking as solemn as she could. Then they all sat down again in a ring, and Alice begged the mouse to tell them something more.
You promised to tell me your history, Juno, and why it is you hate cats and dogs.
Mine is a long and a sad tale.
It is a long tale, certainly, but why do you call it sad?
And she kept on puzzling about it while the mouse was speaking, so that her idea of the story tale was something like a mouse's tale.
Fury said to a mouse that he met in the house, "Let us both go to law. I will prosecute you. Come, I'll take no denial. We must have a trial. For really, this morning, I've nothing to do." Said the mouse to the cur, "Such a trial, dear sir, with no jury or judge, would be wasting our breath." "I'll be judge, I'll be jury," said cunning old Fury. "I'll try the whole cause and condemn you to death." Child, you're not attending. What are you thinking of?
Oh, I beg your pardon. You had got to the fifth bend of your tale, I think.
I had not. You insult me by talking such nonsense.
I didn't mean it, but you're so easily offended, you know.
Oh,
Please come back and finish your story.
no. No. Certainly not. No. What a pity it wouldn't stay.
I wish I had our Dinah here. I know I do. She'd soon fetch the mouse back.
And who is Dinah, if I might venture to ask the question?
Oh, Laurie, Dinah's our cat.
Oh,
And she's such a capital one for catching mice, you can't think. And though I wish you could see her after the birds. Why, she'd eat a little bird as soon as look at it.
This speech caused a remarkable sensation among the party. Some of the birds hurried off at once. One old magpie began wrapping itself up very carefully.
I really must be getting home. The night air doesn't suit my throat.
Oh, come away, my dears. It's high time you baby canaries were all in bed. Come.
I wish I hadn't mentioned Dinah. Nobody seems to like her down here. And I'm sure she's the best cat in the world. Oh, my dear Dinah. I wonder if I shall ever see you anymore.
And here Alice began to cry again, for she felt very lonely and low-spirited now that all the birds and animals had gone away and left her. But in a little while she heard a pattering of footsteps in the distance. It was the White Rabbit.
The Duchess. Oh, my fern whiskers should get me executed as sure as ferrets are ferrets. Where can I have dropped them, I wonder?
Alice guessed in a moment that the White Rabbit was looking for the fan and the white kid gloves, and she very good-naturedly began hunting about for them. But they were nowhere to be seen. Everything seemed to have changed since her swim in the pool, and the great hall with the glass table and the little door had vanished completely. Very soon the rabbit noticed Alice as she went hunting about and called out to her.
Why, Mary Ann, what are you doing out here? Run home this moment and fetch me a pair of gloves and a fan. Quick now!
Oh dear, he takes me for his housemaid. Oh dear!
Quick now! Hurry up, hurry up!
Oh dear!
Hurry up!
Alice was so frightened that she ran off at once in the direction the White Rabbit pointed to. She came upon a neat little house, on the door of which was a bright brass plate with the name W. Rabbit engraved upon it. She went in without knocking and hurried upstairs and found herself in a tidy little room with a table in the window, and on the table...
Oh, there's a fan and some kid gloves. I'll take them to the White Rabbit. Here's another little bottle. It doesn't actually say drink me as the other bottle did, but I think I'll drink some. I know something interesting is sure to happen whenever I eat or drink anything, so I'll just see what this bottle does. I do hope it'll make me grow large again, for really I'm quite tired of being such a tiny little thing.
It did make her grow large again, and much sooner than she'd expected. Before she'd drunk half the bottle, she found her head pressing against the ceiling.
That's quite enough. I hope I shan't grow any more. As it is, I can't get out at the door. I do wish I hadn't drunk quite so much.
But it was too late to wish that. She went on growing and growing, and very soon had to kneel down on the floor. In another minute, there was not even room for this. And she tried the effect of lying down with one elbow against the door and the other arm curled round her head.
I'm still growing. It's like being squashed in a doll's house. I'll have to put my right arm out of the window like this, and one foot up the chimney over there. It's really very uncomfortable. Well, I seem to have stopped growing now anyhow. That's a good thing. But how shall I ever get out again?
Mary Ann, fetch me my gloves this moment.
Oh dear, there's the White Rabbit coming upstairs to look for me.
Mary Ann!
But he won't be able to open the door anyway. My elbow's pressed so hard against it.
Oh, my fern whiskers. I'll have to go round and get into the window.
That you won't.
Alice waited till she heard the rabbit just under the window, and she suddenly spread out her hand and made a snatch in the air.
Oh dear, it sounds as if the White Rabbit has fallen into a cucumber frame or something.
Pat, where are you?
Sure then, I'm here. I'm digging for apples, Your Honour.
Digging for apples indeed. Here, come help me out of this.
Sure, and I will. This minute, Your Honour. Now.
Oh, careful!
There, Your Honour. Now, I just brush Your Honour down.
Now, never mind that. Tell me, Pat, what's that in the window?
Sure, it's an arm, Your Honour.
An arm, you goose? Whoever saw one that size? Why, it fills the whole window.
Sure it does, Your Honour. But it's an arm for all that.
Well, it's got no business there at any rate. Go and take it away.
Take it away, Your Honour?
That's what I said.
Sure, I don't like it, Your Honour, at all. Do as I tell you, you coward.
There was a long silence after this, and at last Alice spread out her hand again and made another snatch in the air.
That's 2 more cucumber frames broken. I wonder what they'll do next. As for pulling me out of the window, I only wish they could. I'm sure I don't want to stay in here any longer.
Now hurry up with the ladders.
Just coming, master.
Where's the other ladder?
Why, I hadn't to bring but one, sir.
Bill the Lizard's got the other. Bill, fetch it here, lad.
Aye, aye. It's a bit of a wait, like.
Come along, come along.
Now, let's be putting the ladders up at this corner.
Better tie 'em together first, Pat.
Well, we jar for you not.
Oh, they'll do well enough. Up onto the roof, you two. Bill, Pat.
Oh, never ain't much of aid for heights.
Now, who's to go down the chimney? Pat?
I will not. You do it.
That I won't.
Bill the Lizard's got to go down.
Bill, the master says you've got to go down the chimney.
What? Me?
Oh, so Bill's got to come down the chimney, has he? Why, they seem to put everything on Bill. I wouldn't be in Bill's place for a good deal. This fireplace is narrow, to be sure, but I think I can kick a little.
She drew her foot as far down the chimney as she could and waited till she heard a little animal. She couldn't guess what sort it was, scratching and scrambling about in the chimney.
Ah, this is Bill. Now what will happen if I just give one sharp kick up the chimney, like this?
It's Bill! There's Bill!
Catch him, you by the hedge.
Aye, master.
Oh, shot across like a rocket, he did. Landing slap on old George.
Pull up his head.
Take a drop of this,
Now,
Bill.
don't choke him.
How you feeling, Bill? What happened to you?
Aye, tell us all about it, old fella.
Well, I hardly know. No more, thank you. I'm better now, but I'm a deal too flustered to tell you. All I know is something comes at me like a jack in a box and up on goes like a skyrocket.
So you did, old fella.
We must burn the house down.
If you do, I'll set Dinah the cat at you.
There was a dead silence instantly. Alice wondered what they would do next. After a minute or two, they started moving about again, and Alice heard the White Rabbit say,
A barrowful will do to begin with.
A barrel full of what, I wonder? Oh! They're throwing pebbles at me now through the window. Oh! I'll soon put a stop to this. You'd better not do that again. Well, that seems to have stopped them. How extraordinary. All the pebbles on the floor are turning into little cakes. Now I wonder, if I eat one of these cakes, it's sure to make some change in my size. And as it can't possibly make me larger, it must make me smaller, I suppose.
So she swallowed one of the cakes and was delighted to find that she began shrinking directly. As soon as she was small enough to get through the door, she ran out of the house and found quite a crowd of little animals and birds waiting outside. The poor little lizard Bill was in the middle, being held up by 2 guinea pigs who were giving it something out of a bottle. They all made a rush at Alice the moment she appeared, but she ran off as hard as she could and soon found herself safe in a thick wood.
Now the first thing I've got to do is to grow to my right size again. And the second thing is to find my way into that lovely garden. Yes, I think that will be the best plan. At present I'm only about 3 inches high. I suppose I ought to eat or drink something or other. But the great question is, what?
Alice stretched herself up on tiptoe and peeped over the edge of a mushroom, and her eyes immediately met those of a large blue caterpillar. It was sitting on the top of the mushroom with its arms folded, quietly smoking a pipe with a long tube called a hookah. Alice and the caterpillar looked at each other for some time in silence. At last the caterpillar took the hookah out of its mouth and addressed her in a languid, sleepy voice.
Who are you?
I hardly know, sir, just at present. At least I know who I was when I got up this morning. But I think I must have been changed several times since then.
What do you mean by that? Explain yourself.
I can't explain myself, I'm afraid, sir, because I'm not myself, you see.
I don't see.
I'm afraid I can't put it more clearly, for I can't understand it myself to begin with. And being so many different sizes in a day, it's very confusing.
It isn't.
Well, perhaps you haven't found it so yet. But when you have to turn into a chrysalis, you will someday, you know, all caterpillars do. And then after that into a butterfly, I should think you'll feel a little queer, won't you?
Not a bit.
Well, perhaps your feelings may be different. All I know is it would be very queer to me.
Who are you?
I think you ought to tell me who you are first.
Why?
Well, anyhow, as you seem to be in such a very unpleasant state of mind, I'll go away.
Come back. I've something important to say.
Very well.
Keep your temper.
Is that all?
No.
Well?
So you think you're changed, do you?
I'm afraid I am, sir. I can't remember things as I used. And I don't keep the same size for 10 minutes together.
Can't remember what things?
Well, I've tried to say, how doth the little busy bee, but it came all different.
Recite, you are old, Father William.
I'll try. You are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white. And yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right? In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I feared it might injure the brain. But now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, why, I do it again and again. You are old, said the youth. One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever. Yet you balanced an eel on the end of your nose.
That is not said right.
Not quite right, I'm afraid.
It is wrong from beginning to end.
Oh.
What size do you want to be?
Well, I should like to be a little larger, sir, if you wouldn't mind. 3 inches is such a wretched height to be.
It is a very good height indeed. I'm exactly 3 inches high myself.
But I'm not used to it.
You'll get used to it in time.
And the caterpillar put the hooker into its mouth and began smoking again. In a minute or two, it took the hooker out of its mouth and yawned once or twice and shook itself. Then it got down off the mushroom and crawled away into the grass, merely remarking as it went,
One side will make you grow taller, and the other side will make you grow shorter.
One side of what? The other side of what?
Of the mushroom, of course.
And in another moment the caterpillar was out of sight.
Well, if the mushroom is perfectly round, how can it have 2 sides? I'll break off one piece here and another piece here. And now, which is which?
She set to work very carefully, nibbling first at one piece of mushroom and then at the other, and growing sometimes taller and sometimes shorter, until she succeeded in bringing herself to her usual height. Then suddenly she saw an open place with a little house in it about 4 feet high.
Whoever lives there, it'll never do to come on them this size. Why, I should frighten them out of their wits.
So she began nibbling at the right-hand bit of the mushroom again, and did not venture to go near the house till she brought herself down to 9 inches high. For a minute or two she stood looking at the house and wondering what to do next, when suddenly a footman in livery came running out of the wood.
Well, he's dressed like a footman, but judging only by his face, I'd have called him a fish.
The fish footman rapped loudly at the door. The door was opened by another footman in livery, with a round face and large eyes like a frog. Both footmen had powdered hair that curled all over their heads. The fish footman began by producing from under his arm a great letter, nearly as large as himself, and this he handed over to the frog footman.
For the Duchess. An invitation from the Queen to play croquet.
From the Queen. An invitation for the Duchess to play croquet.
Then they both bowed so low that their curls got entangled together. Then the fish footman went away, and the frog footman sat on the ground near the door, staring stupidly up into the sky. Alice went timidly up to the door and knocked.
There's no sort of use in knocking.
Oh, why not?
For two reasons. First, because I'm on the same side of the door as you are. And secondly, because they're making such a noise inside, no one could possibly hear you.
Please then, how am I to get in?
There might be some sense in your knocking if we had the door between us. For instance, if you were inside, you might knock and I could let you out, you know.
It's very rude of him to keep looking up into the sky all the time he's speaking to me. But perhaps he can't help it. His eyes are so very nearly at the top of his head. But at any rate, he might answer questions. How am I to get in?
I shall sit here till tomorrow.
At this moment, the door of the house opened, and a large plate came skimming out straight at the frog footman's head. It just grazed his nose.
Oh!
And broke to pieces against one of the trees behind him.
Or I shall sit here till the next day, maybe.
How am I to get in?
Are you to get in at all? That's the first question, you know.
It's really dreadful the way all the creatures argue.
I shall sit here on and off for days and days.
But what am I to do?
Anything you like.
Oh, there's no use talking to him. He's perfectly idiotic. I shall open the door and go straight in.
The door led right into a large kitchen, which was full of smoke from one end to the other. The Duchess was sitting on a three-legged stool in the middle, nursing a baby. The cook was leaning over the fire, stirring a large cauldron that seemed to be full of soup.
Achoo! There's certainly too much pepper in that soup.
There was certainly too much pepper in the air. Even the Duchess sneezed occasionally, and the baby was sneezing and howling alternately without a moment's pause. The only things in the kitchen that did not sneeze were the cook and a large cat which was sitting on the hearth and grinning from ear to ear.
Please, Duchess, would you tell me why your cat grins like that?
It's a Cheshire cat, and that's why. Pig!
Oh!
What's the matter?
I thought you called me a pig.
I was speaking to the baby. Pig!
I didn't know that Cheshire cats always grinned. In fact, I didn't know that cats could grin.
They all can, and most of them do.
I don't know of any that do.
You don't know much, and that's a fact.
Oh.
While Alice was trying to think of something to say, the cook took the cauldron of soup off the fire and at once set to work, throwing everything within her reach at the Duchess and the baby. The fire irons came first, then followed a shower of saucepans, plates and dishes. The Duchess took no notice of them even when they hit her, and the baby was howling so much already that it was quite impossible to say whether the blows hurt it or not.
Oh, please, cook. Please mind what you're doing. Oh, do be careful. That saucepan nearly carried off the baby's precious nose.
If everybody minded their own business, the world would go round a deal faster than it does.
Which would not be an advantage. Just think what work it would make with the day and night. You see, the Earth takes 24 hours to turn round on its axis.
Talking of axes, chop off her head.
Alice glanced rather anxiously at the cook to see if she meant to take the hint. But the cook was busily engaged in stirring the soup and did not seem to be listening. Then the Duchess began nursing her child again, singing a sort of lullaby to it as she did so, and giving it a violent shake at the end of every line.
Speak roughly to your little boy and beat him when he sneezes. He only does it to annoy because he knows it teases. Wow, 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 wow. I speak severely to my boy. I beat him when he sneezes, for he can thoroughly enjoy the pepper when he pleases. Wow, 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 wow. Here, you may nurse the baby a bit if you like. Catch! Oh! I must go and get ready to play croquet with the Queen. See you later.
The cook threw a frying pan after the Duchess as she went out, but it just missed her. Alice had managed to catch the baby with some difficulty and took it out of the house into the open air.
What a funny, queer-shaped little creature. It's holding out its arms and legs in all directions, just like a starfish. And snorting like a steam engine, and wriggling so much I can hardly hold it. Don't grunt. That's not at all a proper way of expressing yourself. What's the matter with you? Oh, certainly have a very turn-up nose, much more like a snout than a real nose. And your eyes are getting extremely small for a baby. Altogether, I don't like the look of you at all. If you're going to turn into a pig, my dear, I'll have nothing more to do with you. Mind now. Good gracious, you are a pig. There's no mistake about that. Well, it would be quite absurd to carry you any longer. There. Off you go. What a relief. It's trotting quietly away into the wood. Now, if it had grown up, it would have made a dreadfully ugly child, but it makes rather a handsome pig, I think.
And Alice began thinking over other children she knew who might do very well as pigs, when she was a little startled by seeing the Cheshire Cat sitting on a bough of a tree a few yards off. The cat only grinned when it saw Alice.
Cheshire Puss, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?
Well, that depends a good deal on where you want to get to.
I don't much care where,
But then it doesn't matter which way you go.
so long as I get somewhere.
Oh, you're sure to do that, if you only walk long enough.
Oh, what sort of people live about here?
In that direction lives a hatter, and in that direction lives a mad here. Visit either you like. They're both mad.
But I don't want to go among mad people.
Oh, you can't help that. We're all mad here. I'm mad. You're mad.
How do you know I'm mad?
Oh, you must be, or you wouldn't have come here.
I don't think that proves it at all. Anyhow, how do you know that you're mad?
To begin with, the dog's not mad. You grant that.
I suppose so.
Well then, you see, a dog growls when it's angry and wags its tail when it's pleased. Now, I growl when I'm pleased and wag my tail when I'm angry. Therefore, I'm mad.
I call it purring, not growling.
Call it what you like. Are you playing croquet with the Queen today?
I should like to very much, but I haven't been invited yet.
You see me there.
The Cheshire Cat suddenly vanished. Alice was not much surprised at this. She was getting so used to queer things happening. While she was looking at the place where it had been, it suddenly appeared again.
By the by, what became of the baby? I've nearly forgotten to ask.
It turned into a pig.
I thought it would.
And the cat vanished again. Alice decided to visit the March Hare.
I've seen hatters before. The March Hare will be much the most interesting. And perhaps as this is May, it won't be raving mad. At least not so mad as it was in March.
As she said this, she looked up, and there on the branch of a tree was the Cheshire Cat again.
Oh!
Did you say pig? Or fig?
I said pig. The baby turned into a pig. And I wish you wouldn't keep appearing and vanishing so suddenly. You make me quite giddy.
All right.
And this time the cat vanished quite slowly, beginning with the end of the tail and ending with the grin, which remained some time after the rest of it had gone.
Well, I've often seen a cat without a grin, but I've never in all my life seen a grin without a cat.
She had not gone much farther before she came in sight of the house of the March Hare. There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it.
Very uncomfortable for the dormouse. Only, as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind.
The table was a large one, but the March Hare, the Dormouse, and the Mad Hatter were all crowded together at one corner of it. When they saw Alice coming, they cried out,
No room! No room!
Nonsense, there's plenty of room. I shall sit at the end of the table. Here.
and Alice sat down in a large armchair. Then the March Hare said,
Have some wine.
I don't see any wine.
There isn't any.
Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it.
It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited.
I didn't know it was your table. It's laid for a great many more than 3.
All this time, the Hatter had been looking at Alice with great curiosity. At last he said,
Your hair wants cutting.
You should learn not to make personal remarks. It's very rude.
Why is a raven like a writing desk?
We shall have some fun now. I'm glad he's begun asking riddles. I believe I can guess that.
Do you mean that you think you can find out the answer to it?
Yes,
Oh, then you should say what you mean.
I do. At least I mean what I say. That's the same thing, you know.
Not the same thing a bit. Why, you might just as well say that I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see.
You might just as well say that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like.
Then the Dormouse said, just as if it were talking in its sleep,
You might just as well say that I breathe when I sleep is the same thing as I sleep when I breathe.
It is the same thing with you, Dormouse.
and here the conversation dropped, and the party sat silent for a minute. Then the Hatter took his watch out of his pocket and looked at it uneasily, shaking it every now and then and holding it to his ear.
What day of the month is it?
The 4th.
2 days wrong.
Is it?
I told you that putting butter into the watch wouldn't suit the works.
It was the best butter.
Yes, but some crumbs must have got in as well. You shouldn't have put it in with a bread knife.
The March Hare took the watch and looked at it gloomily. Then he dipped it into his cup of tea and looked at it again.
It was the best butter, you know.
What a funny watch. It tells the day of the month and doesn't tell what o'clock it is.
Why should it? Does your watch tell you what year it is?
Of course not. But that's because it stays the same year for such a long time together.
Which is just the case with mine.
Oh, I don't quite understand.
The Dormouse is asleep again.
Pour some tea on its nose.
Of course. Just what I was going to remark myself.
Have you guessed the riddle yet?
No, I give it up. What's the answer?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Nor I.
I think you might do something better with the time than waste it asking riddles with no answers.
If you knew time as well as I do, you wouldn't talk about wasting it. It's him.
I don't know what you mean.
Of course you don't. I dare say you've never even spoken to time.
Perhaps not, but I know I have to beat time when I learn music.
Ah, that accounts for it. He won't stand beating. Now, if you only kept on good terms with time, he'd do almost anything you liked with the clock. For instance, suppose it were 9 o'clock in the morning, just time to begin lessons. You'd only have to whisper a hint to time, and round goes the clock in a twinkling. 1:30, time for dinner.
I only wish it was.
That would be grand, certainly. But then I shouldn't be hungry for it, you know.
Not at first, perhaps, but you could keep it to 1:30 as long as you liked.
Isn't that the way you manage?
Not I. I quarrelled with time last March. Just before the March Hare, they went mad, you know. It was at the great concert given by the Queen of Hearts, and I had to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Bat. You know the song, perhaps.
I've heard something like it.
It goes like this. Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wonder what you're at. Up above the world you fly like a tea tray in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle. Can't you stop the Dormouse?
Only if I pinch him.
Then pinch him. Well, I'd hardly finished singing the first verse when the Queen jumped up and bawled out, He's murdering the time, off with his head.
How dreadfully savage.
And ever since then, time won't do a thing I ask. It's always 6 o'clock now.
Is that the reason so many tea things are put out here?
Yes, that's it. It's always tea time, and we've no time to wash the things between whiles.
Then that's why you keep moving round the table, I suppose.
Exactly so, as the tea things get used up.
But what happens when you come to the beginning again?
Suppose we change the subject. I'm getting tired of this. I vote the young lady tells us a story.
I'm afraid I don't know one.
Then the Dormouse shout. Dormouse.
Dormouse? Wake up, Dormouse.
You pinch him on your side here, I'll pinch him on mine.
All right.
I wasn't asleep. I heard every word you fellows were saying.
Tell us the story.
Yes, please do.
And be quick about it or you'll be asleep again before it's done.
Once upon a time there were 3 little sisters, and their names were Elsie, Lacey, and Tilly. And they lived at the bottom of a well.
What did they live on?
They lived on treacle.
They couldn't have done that, you know. They'd have been ill.
So they were very ill.
What an extraordinary way of living. But why did they live at the bottom of a well?
Take some more tea.
I've had nothing yet, so I can't take more.
You mean you can't take less? It's very easy to take more than nothing.
Nobody asked your opinion.
Ah, who's making personal remarks now?
Anyhow, I'll help myself to some tea and bread and butter. Dormouse, why did they live at the bottom of a well?
It was a treacle well.
There's no such thing.
If you can't be civil, you'd better finish the story for yourself.
No, please go on. I won't interrupt again. I dare say there may be one treacle well.
One indeed. Anyway, these 3 little sisters, they were learning to draw, you know.
What did they draw?
Treacle.
I want a clean cup. Let's all move one pacer.
The Hatter moved on as he spoke, and the Dormouse followed him. The March Hare moved into the Dormouse's place, and Alice rather unwillingly took the place of the March Hare.
Oh, you've upset the milk jug.
The Hatter was the only one who got any advantage from the change, and Alice was a good deal worse off than before, as the March Hare had just upset the milk into his plate.
But I don't understand. Where did they draw the treacle from?
You can draw water out of a water well, so I should think you could draw treacle out of a treacle well. Eh, stupid?
But they were in the well.
Of course they were. Well in. They were learning to draw. And they drew all manner of things. Everything that begins with an M.
Why with an M?
Why not?
The Dormouse is going off to sleep again.
No, pinch him.
They drew everything that begins with an M, such as mouse traps, and the moon, and memory, and muchness. You know, you say things are much of a muchness. Did you ever see such a thing as a drawing of a muchness?
Really, now you ask me, I don't think...
Then you shouldn't talk.
Well, really, as you're so rude, I shall leave you.
The Dormouse fell asleep instantly, and neither of the others took the least notice of her going, though she looked back once or twice. The last time she saw them, they were trying to put the Dormouse into the teapot.
At any rate, I'll never go there again. It's the stupidest tea party I was ever at in all my life.
As she picked her way through the wood, Alice noticed that one of the trees had a door leading right into it.
That's very curious. But everything's curious today. I think I may as well go in at once.
And in she went. Once more she found herself in the long hall.
And there's the little glass table with the golden key on it. Now if I take the key, I can unlock the little door into the garden. There. Now all I need to do is to make myself small enough to get through the door.
So she set to work nibbling at a piece of the mushroom till she was about a foot high. Then she walked down the little passage, and then she found herself at last in the garden.
Oh, how beautiful it is with all its flower beds and fountains.
A large rose tree stood near the entrance of the garden. The roses growing on it were white, but there were 3 gardeners at it, busily painting them red. The gardeners were all shaped like playing cards, oblong and flat, with hands and feet at the corners. One of them had 7 hearts painted on him, another had 5 hearts, and the third had only 2.
Oh, look out now, 5. Don't go splashing paint over me like that.
I couldn't help it. 7 jogged my elbow.
That's right, 5. Always lay the blame on others.
You better not talk, 7. I heard the Queen say only yesterday you ought to be beheaded.
What for?
That's none of your business, too.
Yes, it is. It was for bringing the cooked tulip roots instead of onions.
Well, of all the unjust things. Oh, excuse me, miss, I didn't see you were coming.
Please, would you tell me why you were painting those white roses red?
Oh, the fact is, you see, miss, this here ought to have been a red rose tree. And we put a white one in by mistake. And if the Queen was to find out, we should all have our heads cut off, you know. So you see, miss, we're doing our best before she comes
The
to...
Queen's coming. Oh,
And the three gardeners instantly threw themselves flat upon their faces. Alice looked round, eager to see the Queen. First came 10 soldiers carrying clubs. They were all shaped like playing cards, like the three gardeners, oblong and flat, with their hands and feet at the corners. Next came the 10 courtiers, ornamented all over with diamonds. Next came the guests, mostly kings and queens, and among them Alice recognized the White Rabbit. It was talking in a hurried, nervous manner, smiling at everything that was said, and went by without noticing her. Then followed the Knave of Hearts, carrying the king's crown on a crimson velvet cushion, and last of all this grand procession came the King and Queen of Hearts. Alice was rather doubtful whether she ought not to lie down on her face like the three gardeners.
But what would be the use of a procession if people all had to lie down on their faces so that they couldn't see it? Anyhow, they're only a pack of cards after all. I needn't be afraid of them.
So she stood still where she was and waited. When the Queen came opposite to Alice, the procession stopped, and they all looked at her. The Queen said severely to the Knave of Hearts,
Knave? Who is this?
Your Majesty.
Idiot. What's your name, child?
My name is Alice, so please, Your Majesty.
And who are these three on the ground here?
and the Queen pointed to the three gardeners who were lying round the rose tree. For you see, as they were lying on their faces, and the pattern on their backs was the same as the rest of the pack of the cards, she could not tell whether they were gardeners or soldiers or courtiers.
How should I know who they are? It's no business of mine.
Off with her head! Off with her head!
Nonsense!
Oh,
Consider, my dear, she's only a child. You are a queen.
Pshaw! You three lying there, whoever you are, get up.
Oh, yes, Your Majesty. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
Ha!
Yes.
Gardeners, I see. And stop bowing like that to me and everyone else. You make me giddy. What have you been doing to the rose tree?
May it please Your Majesty, we were trying to...
I see. You were trying to paint the white roses red. Officer, those three gardeners, off with their heads.
Oh, Your Majesty,
Let the procession proceed.
And the procession moved on. But three of the soldiers remained behind to execute the unfortunate gardeners, who ran to Alice for protection.
Oh, save us, miss.
We beg you.
Don't be afraid, you shan't be beheaded. Come over here with me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, yes, thank you.
And she put the three of them into a large flower pot that stood near. The three soldiers wandered about for a minute or two looking for them, and then quietly marched off after the others.
Are their heads off?
Their heads are gone, if it please Your Majesty.
That's right. Can you play croquet?
She means you, miss.
Oh, does she? Yes!
Come on, then.
So Alice joined the procession, wondering very much what would happen next. She found herself walking by the White Rabbit, who was peeping anxiously into her face.
It's a very fine day.
Very. Where's the Duchess?
She's under sentence of execution.
What for?
Did you say what a pity?
No, I didn't. I don't think it's at all a pity. I said what for?
She boxed the Queen's ears.
Funny.
Shush. The Queen will hear you. You see, the Duchess came rather late, and the Queen...
We shall now play croquet. Get to your places, everyone.
People began running about in all directions, tumbling up against each other. However, they got settled down in a minute or two, and the croquet game began.
Flamingo. Well, I've never seen such a curious croquet ground in all my life. It's all ridges and furrows. The balls are live hedgehogs, the mallets are live flamingos, and the soldiers have to double themselves up and stand on their hands and feet to make the croquet hoops.
The chief difficulty Alice found at first was in managing her flamingo. She managed to tuck its body away comfortably enough under her arm, but generally, just as she'd got its neck nicely straightened out and was going to give the hedgehog a blow with its head, it would twist itself round and look up in her face with such a puzzled expression that she could not help laughing. And when she'd got its head down, it was very provoking to find that the hedgehog had unrolled itself and was crawling away.
Besides all this, the doubled-up soldiers were always getting up and walking off to other parts of the ground. So the players all played at once without waiting for turns, quarrelling all the while, and fighting for the hedgehogs. And in a very short time, the Queen was in a furious passion.
Off with his head! Off with her head! Officer, off with his head!
Oh dear, I hope the Queen won't quarrel with me. Really, it might happen any minute. And then what would become of me?
Off with his head!
They're dreadfully fond of beheading people here. The great wonder is anyone left alive?
Off with her head!
I wonder whether I could get away without the Queen seeing me.
She was looking about for some way of escape when she noticed a curious appearance in the air. After watching it a moment or two, she made it out to be a grin.
It must be the Cheshire Cat. But there's only a grin and no face at all. Oh, the mouth is appearing behind the grin. And there's the nose and the eyes. And yes, now the ears are coming.
How are you getting on?
Well, you see, I've been playing croquet, or trying to play croquet, with this flamingo for a mallet. And the flamingo is so heavy to carry. I'll put it down for a minute. There. Tell me, is any more of you going to appear besides your head?
Oh, I don't think so. The head's enough for the time being.
And no one plays at all fairly, and they all quarrel so dreadfully one can't hear oneself speak. And they don't seem to have any rules in particular. And you've no idea how confusing it is, all the things being alive. I should have croqueted the Queen's hedgehog just now, only it ran away when it saw mine coming.
How do you like the Queen?
Not at all. She's so extremely...
Mind, she's just behind you.
She's so extremely likely to win that it's hardly worthwhile finishing the game.
Ah, perhaps so.
Who are you talking to, child?
It's a friend of mine, Your Majesty, a Cheshire Cat. Allow me to introduce it.
I don't like the look of it at all. However, it may kiss my hand if it likes.
I'd rather not.
Don't be impertinent and don't look at me like that.
A cat may look at a king. I've read that in some book, but I don't remember where.
Well, it must be removed. My dear.
What is it?
My dear, I wish you would have this cat removed.
Off with his head.
Certainly, my dear. I'll fetch the executioner myself.
Those three have missed their turns. Off with their heads.
Meanwhile, Alice's flamingo had wandered away to the other side of the garden.
Oh dear, it's trying to fly up into a tree.
By the time she'd caught it and brought it back, there was quite a large crowd round the Cheshire Cat, and a dispute was going on between the King, the Queen, and the executioner. The moment Alice appeared, the King, the Queen, and the executioner all appealed to her to settle the question.
What I says is you can't cut off a head unless there's a body to cut it off from. I ain't never had to do such a thing afore, and I ain't going to begin at my time of life.
Don't talk nonsense. Anything that has a head can be beheaded. It stands to reason.
If something isn't done about it in less than no time, I'll have everybody executed all round.
What do you think, my dear child?
Well, the head belongs to the Cheshire Cat, and the Cheshire Cat belongs to the Duchess. You'd better ask her about it.
Good idea.
The Duchess is in prison. Executioner, go and fetch her here.
Certainly, Your Majesty, certainly.
And the executioner went off like an arrow. The cat's head began fading away the moment the executioner was gone, and by the time he'd come back with the Duchess, it had entirely disappeared. So the King and the executioner ran wildly up and down looking for it, while the rest of the party went back to the game of croquet. The Duchess tucked her arm affectionately into Alice's.
You can't think how glad I am to see you again, my dear child.
Alice did not much like the Duchess keeping so close to her. First, because the Duchess was very ugly, and secondly, because she was exactly the right height to rest her chin on Alice's shoulder, and it was an uncomfortably sharp chin. However, Alice did not like to be rude, so she bore it as well as she could while they walked up and down together.
I dare say you're wondering why I don't put my arm round your waist. The reason is that I'm doubtful about the temper of your flamingo. Shall I try the experiment?
He might bite.
Very true. Flamingos and mustard both bite. And the moral of that is, birds of a feather flock together.
Only mustard isn't a bird.
Right, as usual. What a clear way you have of putting things.
Mustard is a mineral, I think.
Of course it is. There is a large mustard mine near here. And the moral of that is, the more there is of mine, the less there is of yours.
Oh, I know. Mustard's a vegetable. It doesn't look like one, but it is.
I quite agree with you. And the moral of that is, be what you would seem to be. Or, if you like to put it more simply, Never imagine yourself not to be otherwise than what it might appear to others, that what you were or might have been was not otherwise than what you had been would have appeared to them to be otherwise.
I think I should understand that better if I had it written down, but I can't quite follow it as you say it.
Oh, that's nothing to what I could say if I chose. Oh, here's the Queen coming.
Well?
A fine day, Your Majesty.
Now I give you fair warning, Duchess. Either you must be off or your head must be off. And that in about half no time. Take your choice.
If it please Your Majesty, I'll be off.
Have you seen the Mock Turtle yet, child?
No, Your Majesty. I don't even know what a mock turtle is.
It's the thing mock turtle soup is made from.
I never saw one or heard of one.
Come on then, and he'll tell you his history. You see that griffin there lying fast asleep in the sun?
What a strange-looking animal, with a lion's body and an eagle's head and wings.
Up, you lazy thing, and take this young lady to see the Mock Turtle and hear his history. I'll leave you with the griffin, child.
But I don't even...
I must go back and see after some executions I've ordered.
What fun.
What is the fun?
Why, she, the Queen. It's all her fancy, that. They never executes nobody, you know. Come on.
Everybody says come on here. I never was so ordered about in all my life. Never.
Alice and the Griffin had not gone far before they saw the Mock Turtle in the distance, sitting sad and lonely on a little ledge of rock. As they came nearer, Alice could hear him sighing as if his heart would break.
Poor Mock Turtle. Tell me, Griffin, what is his sorrow?
It's all his fancy that he hasn't got no sorrow, you know. Come on. This here young lady, she wants for to know your history, she do.
I'll tell it her. Sit down, both of you, and don't speak a word till I've finished.
I don't see how he can ever finish if he doesn't begin.
Once I was a real turtle.
There must be more to come.
When we were little, we went to school in the sea. The master was an old turtle. We used to call him Tortoise.
Why did you call him Tortoise if he wasn't one?
We called him Tortoise because he taught us. Really, you are very dull.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself for asking such a simple question.
Oh, I'm very sorry.
Drive on, old fellow. Don't be all day about it.
Yes. We went to school in the sea, though you mayn't believe it.
I never said I didn't.
You did.
Hold your tongue.
We had the best of educations. In fact, we went to school every day.
I've been to a day school too. You needn't be so proud as all that.
With extras.
Yes, we learned French and music.
And washing.
Certainly not.
Ah, then yours wasn't a really good school. Now at ours, they had at the end of the bill French, music, and washing. Extra.
You couldn't have wanted it much, living at the bottom of the sea.
I couldn't afford to learn it. I only took the regular course.
What was that?
Reeling and writhing, of course, to begin with, and then the different branches of arithmetic. Ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision.
I never heard of uglification. What is it?
Never heard of uglifying? You know what to beautify is, I suppose?
Yes, it means to make anything prettier.
Well, then, if you don't know what to uglify is, you are a simpleton.
Oh. What else had you to learn?
Well, there was mystery, ancient and modern, with seaography. Then drawling. The drawling master was an old conger eel that used to come once a week. He taught us drawling, stretching and fainting in coils.
What was that like?
Well, I can't show it you myself, I'm too stiff. And the Griffin never learnt it.
Hadn't time. I went to the classical master, though. He was an old crab, he was.
Oh, I never went to him. He taught laughing and grief, they used to say.
Yes, so he did, so he did. Ah, me.
And how many hours a day did you do lessons?
10 hours the first day, 9 the next, and so on.
What a curious plan.
That's the reason they're called lessons. Because they lesson from day to day.
Oh, really? Then the 11th day must have been a holiday.
Of course it was.
And how did you manage on the 12th?
That's enough about lessons. Tell us something about the games now.
You may.
It's just the same as if he had a bone in his throat. I'll thump his back. There you are, old fella.
Thank you, Griffin. Thank you. Now, young lady, you may not have lived much under the sea.
I haven't.
And perhaps you were never even introduced to a lobster.
I once tasted. Oh, no, never.
So you can have no idea what a delightful thing a lobster quadrille is.
No, indeed. What sort of a dance is it?
Why, you first form into a line along the seashore.
2 lines, seals, turtles and so on. Then when you've cleared the jellyfish out of the way...
That generally takes some time.
You advance twice.
Each with a lobster as a partner.
Of course, advance twice, set to partners.
Change lobsters and retard in the same order.
Then you know you throw the lobster as far out to sea as you can.
Swim after them.
Turn a somersault in the sea.
Change lobsters again.
Back to land again and... That's all the first figure.
It must be a very pretty dance.
Would you like to see a little of it?
Very much indeed.
Come, let's try the first figure. We can do it without lobsters, you know. Which shall sing?
Oh, you sing. I've forgotten the words.
So the Mock Turtle and the Griffin began solemnly dancing round and round Alice and waving their forepaws to mark the time, while the Mock Turtle sang very slowly and sadly.
Will you walk a little faster, said a whiting to a snail. There's a porpoise close behind us and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They are waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you join the dance? You can really have no notion how delightful it will be when they take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea. But the snail replied, too far, and gave a look askance. Said he thanked the whiting kindly, but he would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not, would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not join the dance.
Thank you. It's a very interesting dance to watch. And I do so like that curious song about the whiting.
You know why it's called a whiting?
I never thought about it. Why?
It does the boots and shoes.
Does the boots and shoes?
Why, what are your shoes done with? I mean, what makes them so shiny?
They're done with boot blacking, I believe.
Boots and shoes under the sea are not done with blacking. They are done with whiting. Now you know.
And what are the boots and shoes made of?
Soles and heels, of course. Any shrimp could have told you that.
If I'd been the whiting, I'd have said to the porpoise, keep back, please. We don't want you with us.
They were obliged to have him with them. No wise fish would go anywhere without a porpoise.
Wouldn't it really?
Of course not. Why, if a fish came to me and told me he was going a journey, I should say, with what purpose?
Don't you mean purpose?
I mean what I say.
Come, let's hear some of your adventure.
So Alice began telling them her adventures from the time when she first saw the White Rabbit. She was a little nervous about it just at first. The two creatures got so close to her, one on each side, and opened their eyes and mouths so very wide. But she gained courage as she went on. Her listeners were perfectly quiet till she got to the part about her repeating, "You are old, Father William," to the caterpillar, and the words all coming different. And then the Mock Turtle drew a long breath.
That's very curious.
It's all about as curious as it can be.
Well, I don't really know.
It all came different. I should like to hear her repeat something now. Tell her to begin.
Stand up and repeat. 'Tis the voice of the sluggard.
How these creatures order one about. I might as well be at school at once. But my head's so full of the lobster quadrille that I hardly know what I shall say.
Come on, begin.
'Tis the voice of the lobster. I heard him declare, "You have baked me too brown. I must sugar my hair." As a duck with its eyelids, so he with his nose trims his belt and his buttons and turns out his toes. When the sands are all dry, he is gay as a lark and will talk in contemptuous tones of the shark. But when the tide rises and sharks are around, his voice has a timid and tremulous sound.
That's different from what I used to say when I was a child.
Well, I never heard it before, but it sounds uncommon nonsense. I should like to have it explained.
She can't explain it.
What is the use of repeating all that stuff if you don't explain it as you go on? It's by far the most confusing thing I ever heard.
Yes, I think you'd better leave off.
Very well, I don't mind.
Shall we try another figure of the lobster quadrille? Or would you like the Mock Turtle to sing you another song?
Oh, a song, please, if the Mock Turtle would be so kind.
No accounting for tastes. Sing her turtle soup, will you, old fellow?
Beautiful soup, so rich and green, waiting in a hot tureen. Who for such dainties would not stoop? Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, who cares for fish, game, or any other dish? Who would not give all else for toup? Pennyworth only of beautiful soup. Pennyworth only of beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Soup of the evening. Beautiful, beautiful soup.
Chorus again!
Trial's beginning.
Come on, you can hold my hand, quick!
What trial is it?
Come on!
What about the end of the song?
Can't wait for that! Faster!
Evening, beautiful, beautiful soup.
When Alice and the Gryphon arrived at the trial, the King and Queen of Hearts were seated on their throne, with a great crowd assembled about them, all sorts of little birds and beasts, as well as the whole pack of playing cards. The Knave of Hearts was standing before them in chains, with a soldier on each side to guard him, and near the king was the White Rabbit, dressed as a herald, with a trumpet in one hand and a scroll of parchment in the other. In the very middle of the court was a table, with a large dish of tarts upon it. They looked so good that it made Alice quite hungry to look at them.
I wish they'd get the trial finished and hand round the refreshments. Let me see. The king will be the judge. He's wearing a great wig with his crown on top of it. And that's the jury box. And those 12 creatures, I suppose, are the jurors. There's a duck and a frog and a squirrel and a guinea pig, 2 guinea pigs, and a hedgehog and a mole. And oh yes, there's Bill the lizard. Tell me, Griffin, why are they all writing so busily on slates? They can't have anything to put down yet before the trial's begun.
They're writing down their names in case they forget them before the end of the trial.
Stupid things.
As Alice was standing just beside the jury box, she could see that all the jurors were writing down the words, stupid things, on their slates. She overheard one of them, it was Bill the lizard, saying to his neighbour, the guinea pig,
Can you tell me how to spell stupid, neighbour?
S-T-O-O-P-I-D.
Oh, thank you.
A nice muddle their slates will be in before the trial's over. But what I can't stand is that squeaky pencil.
So Alice very soon found an opportunity of taking it away. She did it so quickly that the poor little juror, it was Bill the lizard, could not make out at all what had become of it. So after hunting all about for it, he was obliged to write with one finger for the rest of the day. Now the White Rabbit stepped forward and called out,
Silence in court! Your Majesty, I will now read the accusation.
Very well.
The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts all on a summer day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts and took them quite away.
Jurors, consider your verdict.
Not yet, Your Majesty. There's a great deal to come before that.
Oh, then call the first witness.
First witness.
The first witness was the Hatter. He was followed into the court by the March Hare, arm in arm with the Dormouse. The Hatter was carrying a teacup in one hand and a piece of bread and butter in the other.
I beg pardon, Your Majesty, for bringing these in, but I hadn't quite finished my tea when I was sent for.
You ought to have finished. When did you begin?
14th of March, I think it was, wasn't it, Hare?
Oh, 15th.
16th.
Jurymen, write that down.
14, 15, 16, 4, 5, and 9, and 6, 15, 3, 1, 3.
Take off your hat.
It isn't mine.
Ah, stolen. Jurors, make a note of that. He admits it isn't his hat.
I keep hats to sell. I've none of my own. I'm a hatter.
Give your evidence and don't be nervous, or I'll have you executed on the spot.
The Queen put on her spectacles and began staring hard at the Hatter, who turned pale and fidgeted. In his confusion, he bit a large piece out of his teacup instead of the bread and butter. Just at this moment, Alice felt a very curious sensation, which puzzled her a great deal until she made out what it was. She was beginning to grow larger again. The Dormouse was sitting beside Alice because he hadn't been able to find a place to sit with the March Hare.
I wish you wouldn't squeeze so I can hardly breathe.
I can't help it. I'm growing.
You've no right to grow here.
Don't talk nonsense. You know you're growing too.
Yes, but I grow at a reasonable pace, not in that ridiculous fashion.
And the Dormouse got up very sulkily and crossed over to the other side of the court. All this time the Queen had never left off staring at the Hatter.
Officer, bring me the list of the singers in the last concert. I'm sure it was the Hatter who sang Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Bat and simply murdered the time.
Oh, Your Majesty!
At this, the wretched Hatter trembled so that he shook off both his shoes.
Give your evidence, or I'll have you executed, whether you are nervous or not.
I'm a poor man, Your Majesty, and I hadn't begun my tea in not above a week or so, and what with the bread and butter getting so thin and the twinkling of the tea.
The twinkling of what?
It began with the tea.
Of course twinkling begins with a T. You take me for a dance. Go on.
I'm a poor man, and most things twinkled after that, only the March Hare said.
I didn't.
You did.
I deny it. He denies it. Leave out that part.
Well, at any rate, the Dormouse said.
The Dormouse is asleep.
After that, I got some more bread and butter.
What did the Dormouse say?
That I can't remember.
You must remember, or I'll have you executed.
Oh, Your Majesty, I'm a poor man, Your Majesty.
You're a very poor speaker.
Hooray! Hooray!
Officers of the court, suppress that guinea pig.
The officers of the court had a large canvas bag, which tied up at the mouth with strings. Into this they slipped the guinea pig head first, and then sat upon it.
Please, Your Majesty.
If that's all you know, you may stand down.
I can't go no lower. I'm on the floor as it is.
Then you may sit down.
Hooray! Hooray!
Suppress that other guinea pig.
Come on.
As I was saying before the guinea pig interrupted, you may sit down.
I'd rather finish my tea.
You may go.
Oh, thank you, Your Majesty.
The Hatter didn't even wait to put his shoes on. He hurriedly left the court with an anxious look at the Queen, who was reading the list of singers at the concert.
And just take his head off outside. He's the one who murdered the time.
If you please, Your Majesty, he's out of sight already.
Then call the next witness.
Next witness.
The next witness was the Duchess's cook. She carried the pepper box in her hand, and Alice guessed who it was even before she got into the court by the way the people near the door began sneezing all at once.
Give your evidence.
Shut!
What am I to do now?
Your Majesty must cross-examine this witness.
Well, if I must, I must. What are tarts made of?
Pepper, mostly.
Collar that dormouse. Behead that dormouse. Tear that dormouse out of court. Suppress him. Lynch him. Off with his whiskers.
I'll have off with his Silence in court!
By the time they got the dormouse turned out and had settled down again, the cook had disappeared.
Never mind. Call the next witness. Really, my dear, you must cross-examine the next witness. It quite makes my forehead ache.
Nonsense.
I wonder whom the White Rabbit will call as the next witness. They haven't got much evidence yet.
Next witness, Alice.
Here.
Alice was so surprised at hearing the White Rabbit call out her name that she quite forgot how large she'd grown in the last few minutes, and she jumped up in such a hurry that she tipped over the jury box with the edge of her skirt. All the jurymen were upset under the heads of the crowd below, and there they lay sprawling about, reminding Alice very much of a globe of goldfish she had accidentally upset the week before.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
She began picking them up as quickly as she could, for the accident of the goldfish kept running in her head, and she had a vague sort of idea that they must be collected at once and put back in the jury box or they would die.
The trial cannot proceed until all of the jurymen are back in their proper places. All of them.
Alice looked at the jury box and saw that in her haste she'd put the lizard in head downwards, and the poor little thing was waving its tail about in a melancholy way, quite unable to move. She soon got it out again and put it right.
Not that it signifies much. I should think it would be quite as much use in the trial one way up as the other.
As soon as the jury had a little recovered from the shock of being upset, and their slates and pencils had been found and handed back to them, they set to work very diligently to write out a history of the accident, all except the lizard, who seemed too much overcome to do anything but sit with its mouth open, gazing up into the roof of the court.
What do you know about this business?
Nothing.
Nothing whatever?
Nothing whatever.
Jurors, make a note of that. That's very important.
Unimportant, Your Majesty means, of course.
Oh, unimportant, of course. I meant important, unimportant, unimportant, important.
Some of the jury wrote it down important and some unimportant. Alice could see this as she was near enough to look over their slates.
But it doesn't matter a bit, really.
The king had for some time been busily writing in his notebook.
Silence! Rule 42. All persons more than a mile high to leave the court.
That means you.
I'm not a mile high.
You are?
Nearly 2 miles high.
Well, I shan't go at any rate. Besides, that's not a regular rule. You invented it just now.
It's the oldest rule in the book.
Then it ought to be number 1.
Oh, well, anyhow, jurors, consider your verdict.
There's more evidence to come yet, please, Your Majesty. This paper has just been picked up.
What is in it?
I haven't opened it yet, but it seems to be a letter written by the prisoner to somebody.
It must have been that, unless it was written to nobody, which isn't usual, you know.
Who is it addressed to?
It isn't addressed at all. In fact, there's nothing written on the outside. It isn't a letter after all. It's a set of verses.
Oh, are they in the prisoner's handwriting?
No, they're not. That's the queerest thing about it.
He must have imitated somebody else's hand. Knave of Hearts, what have you to say about this?
Please, Your Majesty, I didn't write it. They can't prove I did. There's no name signed at the end.
If you didn't sign it, that only makes the matter worse. You must have meant some mischief, or else you'd have signed your name like an honest man.
That proves his guilt, of course. So off with...
It doesn't prove anything of the sort. Why, you don't even know what the verses are about.
Read them.
Where shall I begin, please, Your Majesty?
Begin at the beginning, and go on till you come to the end. Then stop.
They told me you had been to her and mentioned me to him. She gave me a good character, but said I could not swim. He sent them word I had not gone, we know it to be true. If she should push the matter on, what would become of you? I gave her 1, they gave him 2, you gave us 3 or more. They all returned from him to you, though they were mine before.
Aha! That's the most important piece of evidence we've heard yet. So now let the jury...
If any one of them can explain it, I'll give him 6pence. I don't believe there's an atom of meaning in it.
If there's no meaning in it, that saves a world of trouble, you know, as we needn't try to find any. And yet I don't know, I seem to see some meaning in them after all. Said I could not swim. Knave of Hearts, you can't swim, can you?
Do I look like it?
All right so far. We know it to be true. That's the jury, of course. If she should push the matter on, that must be the Queen, what would become of you? What indeed? I gave her 1, they gave him 2. Why, that must be what the Knave of Hearts did with the tarts, you know.
But it goes on. They all returned from him to you.
Nothing can be clearer than that. Why, there are the tarts, there on the table. Let the jury consider their verdict.
No, sentence first, verdict afterwards.
Stuff and nonsense. The idea of having the sentence first.
Hold your tongue.
I won't.
Off with her head.
Who cares for you? You're all nothing but a pack of cards.
At this, the whole pack of playing cards rose up into the air and came flying down upon her.
Oh!
Alice gave a little scream, half of fright and half of anger, and tried to beat them off, and found herself lying on the bank with her head in the lap of her sister, who was gently brushing away some dead leaves that had fluttered down from the trees upon her face.
Wake up, Alice, dear. Why, what a long sleep you've had.
Oh, Helen, I've had such a curious dream. All about a white rabbit and a caterpillar sitting on a mushroom, and the March Hare and the King and Queen of Hearts, and the Frog Footman and the Duchess, and the Mock Turtle. It sounded just like a cow mooing. And there was a trial, and one of the jurymen was a lizard named Bill.
It must have been a curious dream, Alice, dear, certainly. But now run into your tea. It's getting late.
So Alice got up and ran off, thinking while she ran what a wonderful dream it had been. But her sister sat still, just as she had left her, leaning her head on her hand, watching the setting sun, and thinking of little Alice and all her wonderful adventures. And she pictured to herself how this same little sister of hers would in the aftertime be herself a grown woman, and how she would keep the simple and loving heart of her childhood, and how she would gather about her other little children and make their eyes bright and eager with many a strange tale, perhaps even with the dream of Wonderland of long ago, and how she would find a pleasure in all their simple joys and the happy summer days.